Cool. And right.
What were you going to say?
I was just going to say thanks a lot for having me. First of all, it's really nice that you guys are covering so many Alcopop bands, and that's really
That's
gratifying. So yeah, lovely to have a chat.
We've done so much Alcopop bands. We're thinking of doing like an Alcopop special.
I mean, that sounds awesome to me. We'd be well on board with that. Yeah, it's great. Who have you spoken to recently? Frauds?
False advertising.
Dits, maybe? Have you spoken to Dits?
No, but I can probably get an interview with Dits.
Yeah, you'd been speaking to their manager like way back last summer and then didn't ever fit it in. So
Cool. Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. But yeah, so thanks very much. And yeah, as I say, a pleasure to chat. I think I saw you on BBC Breakfast months ago. So yeah, nice to speak to you finally.
Right. By the time this comes out, I'll be 11. What were you listening to when you were 11?
That is a great question. I think 11 would have been sort of my my taste is not as cool as yours, Arlo. But basically, when I was young, through my parents, I got big into the Beatles. They were the first kind of band I properly discovered, and I was kind of like, I say discovered, but you know, my dad gave me some Beatles records. I was like, this is amazing, really love this. And then by the time I was 11, I did some sort of school projects on the Beatles and stuff. I got super into them. By the time I was 11, I was sluicing somewhere between really digging ABBA and listening to loads and loads of ABBA. And then I went into Woolworths one day, and my mum was like, why are you buying another ABBA tape? Why don't you try something else? So then I moved on to sort of dance pop. So I was very much into like Two Unlimited and The Real McCoy and Corona and bands like that when I was 11. So yeah, I really, you know, you wouldn't have guessed at that age that I was going to go on to run an independent label. I was very much into the highly produced, slick kind of like dance stuff of the 90s. Two Unlimited being probably my very favorite. I don't think you'll have heard No Limits, Arlo. I wouldn't bother. So yeah, that was what I was into when I was 11, which puts me to shame somewhat.
Yeah, right. If Alcopop was a cartoon character, which one would it be?
Again, a very good question. I'm showing my age a bit, but I like to think that Alcopop is probably Dogtanian when it comes to cartoon characters. I don't know if you're aware of Dogtanian, but he is
I heard of him once because my dad made us watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would probably go for Dogtanian. You know, he's quite lovable, and he's got a side where, you know, he's a little bit reckless, but has other people around to look after him, which I always think is quite important. And you know, I sort of feel like that. You know, we've got that kind of, you know, with Jamie who works at Wall of Sound, and Lee and Luke who works with us, like, and my wife Ree who does our art. They're the kind of the Musker hounds around us to I guess kind of keep us on the straight and narrow. But ultimately, I feel like Dogtanian is a force for good. You know, he's making his way in the world, you know, making a lot of mistakes, but doing positive things. And I think I quite like to think that Alcopop is like that.
Yeah. What do you actually do running a record label?
Oh, it's interesting you ask that, actually, because there's a million different things that I have to do on a sort of daily basis. I think one of the things with Alcopop is that we try and be different things to different people. You know, we work with some bands who have really big teams and managers and booking agents and, you know, lots of people there in their team. So we have to kind of slot in and say, right, let's make these records cool. Let's make sure they're in the shops on time, all of that kind of stuff. But then other bands we work with are a lot smaller, and who need more from us. So we can help them put on gigs, we can help them with the ideas, we can help them with the artwork, all of that kind of stuff. So I guess Alcopop is here to kind of basically be there for bands doing whatever they want, but also trying to build our own kind of excitement, like speaking to people like you, speaking to people who dig the bands on the label, introducing people to other bands, all of that kind of stuff. So I would say we're a promotional mouthpiece for our bands, and then we're kind of fixers in the background, you know, making sure that whatever a band needs, we can provide. And also we like to put on great shows. That's fun, but obviously very difficult at the time. So I guess it is weird with a record label. We do a lot of things, but it's very much different things for different bands depending on what they need.
Okay. Right. How do you choose which bands to sign?
Right. Okay. So it's a sort of it's a multifaceted process, I guess, speaking to the bands we want to sign. So first and foremost, and most importantly, we have to love the music. Like that's the absolute most important thing for us, I think, because the last thing I want to do, as I'm sure you found with doing the zine, is to work with bands that you don't like. Because there's no point speaking to a band and spending loads of time, writing about them and putting their music out if you don't like the music, right? So that's kind of first and foremost. Secondly, I get a lot of personal recommendations, and I think that's a good way to find bands. So, a lot of the time it will be bands that we work with, their manager might get in touch or a plugger might get in touch and say, hey, Jack, have you checked this band out? They're really good. They're right up your street. They're kind of, exactly what we think you'll be into. And then third of all, because obviously there's a lot of work to do with the label, I kind of find that I don't get to listen to as much new stuff as I used to, which is a real shame because that's kind of the most fun thing about running a record label. But it'll be a lot of the time we'll get demos through and I don't get a chance to listen to them. So we've hired a guy called Luke who also runs a label called Stereo Brain. I don't know if you've come across those guys, but they're pretty cool. And basically, we've hired him to kind of make sure that he filters through all the demos that come through. So, we get demos like loads every day. And Luke basically sits at home listening to them all. And sort of, when there's something interesting there, he'll get in touch and go, okay, we should really check this out. This is dead good. Which has been nice, actually. And we've discovered a few bands that way, from home counties, who we signed earlier in the year, right through to Snowcoats, who are a Dutch band. I'd never even played in the UK before, and I'd never sort of heard of them. And suddenly this demo came through. Luke listened to it and was like, this is the one. We fell in love with the tracks and then went from there. So I guess there's sort of personal recommendations, bands being in scenes that kind of make sense. And then we do sign bands from random demos very occasionally, which I think is still a nice thing to do. So I would always kind of encourage people to send us demos because we've got a filter to make sure they're all being listened to. And, it's always lovely to hear a band that you've never heard of before, suddenly hear some songs and like, I've fallen in love with that band straight away. So yeah, that's essentially the different ways in how we sign bands.
Yeah. I've got a band that you might like to sign. There's a band that I'm friends with called the Pleasure Dome.
The Pleasure Dome, cool. Where are they from? They round your way?
From Bristol.
Okay, I'll check them out.
Good.
Yeah, and that's the thing, it's people like you and people who run these zines and hear all this new stuff who kind of tell us about bands, and then we get excited about them because it's sort of, much as I'd like to, we can't be at a gig every night. Oh, we certainly can't be at a gig every night in the pandemic. But, it's sort of like when we first started the label and I was young and handsome, then we used to go out every night, gig every night, see all the bands going on. But then I get a bit older and I don't, can't do it every single night. So we have to rely on other stuff as well. So I will check those out, Arlo, and give them a listen. What kind of music is it, Pleasure Dome?
It's sort of quite rocky and post-punky. They've got a new single coming out that I've done a review of, so maybe check that one out when it comes out.
What's the single called? Do you remember?
This Is Not a Love Song.
Nice. I will check that out.
When it comes out, we'll send it to you.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you. Great stuff. You see, getting recommendations on an interview is awesome.
Wait, Mum says she's sure Bobby, the singer, will send it to you.
Yeah, I'd be quite happy to.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Do you live near Bristol then?
I live in a small village of like 20 minutes away from it.
Okay. I used to live in Bristol like a few years ago, up in by the Bristol Rovers grounds, like just around that sort of area.
Right. I started to notice the label because I spotted lots of bands that I like are on Alcopop, like Dream Nails, Frauds, Dits, False Advertising, Penis, Tiger Club. What are these? What are 3 Alcopop bands that I should look out for in 2021?
Okay, that's a great question, and that's a really good list. Like all of those guys had a pretty good year last year. That Dream Nails record, I think, was really special. That was a fun one coming out. So 3 bands you should look out for in 2020 who aren't on that list. First up, I would suggest Cherym, Cherym. Now, Cherrim are a three-piece trio, sort of punky trio from Derry in Ireland, who we've just signed. They are absolutely infectiously fun. They're energetic. They're really sort of like pop punk kind of finery, not pop punk, I guess, but sort of punky pop, if you know what I mean. So yeah, they're really good, and I would definitely check them out. They released their first single, which is called "Kisses on My Cards," just a couple of days ago. So we're just sort of starting to push them, and we've got lots of things coming up. So that's really exciting. I think they're going to be brilliant. When is this scene going to press, by the way?
Mid-April.
Mid-April. Okay, cool. I can tell you about another band then that we haven't announced yet, but we'll be announcing in March. So there's a band called The Subways, who we've just signed for their new single. Guy called Billy and Charlotte. They've been around for a long time, but they're absolutely fantastic. Like I first saw them, I think about 6 or 7 years ago. They had a big hit called oh God, the song's gone out of my head. That's bad. Rock and Roll Queen, which is like one of the sort of the classic indie rock songs. So we're going to be signing those in sort of announcing it in the next couple of weeks. They did have a massive tour in September, but unfortunately, I think it's going to have to be pushed back. But it's kind of like a re-emergence of the Subways with some amazing new tunes, some really cool stuff. And we've got a really nice vinyl coming, which is a splatter 7-inch. With a zine inside it, and then an interview with the Nova Twins on the B-side. So yeah, I'm really excited about that one. I think that's going to be a really good one, and very excited to announce. And then other than that, who else should I go for? Oh, I mentioned them before actually. Snowcoats. Snowcoats are a Dutch band we work with. They're really great, sort of harmonious pop. We put a 4-track EP out with them at the end of last year. And they're just the most summery, beautiful kind of shimmering sort of pop stuff ever, like really indie pop. Lots of nice guitars, super lovely harmonies, and hopefully they're going to be over to tour the UK as soon as they can. So there's going to be a lot more stuff coming from them. They're in the studio writing. So yeah, that's 3 bands I would say were well worth getting excited about.
Yeah. Right. You've got a reputation for making really cool vinyl and packaging and coming up with fun ideas. Is there any idea that cost loads of money and you really regret?
Well, thank you for saying that. The reputation is, it's something we've worked on, and hopefully people really like it. The idea of something that's cost loads of money and hasn't worked out. We have had a lot of stuff that hasn't worked. We released a single on. Basically, it came in an envelope. So you bought the single for £1, and then it came with sort of like 50 little cards with downloads on. So the idea being that you could give them all to your friends. It's a nice idea, but it didn't really work. But that didn't cost an awful lot of money. Unbelievably, over the last sort of 12, 13 years, I think we've avoided any really costly mistakes. So touch wood, we we haven't done it yet. We've done stuff like we made a mountain bike. We put a compilation on that, so that was expensive. Each bike was about £300 each, but we only got a few made, and they all sold, so we were okay with that, which was lucky. But yeah, so we haven't made any outrageously expensive mistakes yet. But what I will say, Arlo, is there is definitely still time for that to happen. So watch this space. We try and be careful with our money, just because obviously if we spend it all on something that goes wrong, then we lose money from other parts of the business, so we can't make our vinyl quite as pretty. So yeah, all our ideas have pretty much at least made their money back, if not lost us a load of cash. So yeah, fingers crossed we're all right at the moment.
Yeah. I found out on Wikipedia that you started the label with money that you won on a bet. Looking back, would you do the same now, or do you wish to spend it on something else? If so, what?
Absolutely, I would definitely do the same again. So it was basically, we borrowed a little bit of money off my dad and put some of it on Portsmouth beating Charlton back in 2006. You were probably not even born that year, I wouldn't have thought. So yeah, Lemana Lualua, who was a Congolese refugee playing for Portsmouth at the time, scored the winning goal, and we won some money. So it's an interesting one for this me, because I would definitely do it again. But if somebody else was starting a record label, I wouldn't necessarily advise they did the same. If I could go back and spend it on something else, you know, I think what I would have probably invested in, because, you know, it was a long time ago, was a CD burning tower, which was back in the day, basically a big tower that you just put a CD in, and then you could burn 6 or 7 at a time. Now, a lot of the CDs we did back in those days were kind of like created, and the promos were sort of created by other people who spent ages and charged us loads of money for it. So that's what I would have gone and invested in to make my life easier. Obviously, I probably wouldn't still use it now because we're more about vinyl and digital, but that would have been very useful when we first started out. But sorry, yeah, go on.
My dad has one. I think it's one of them. There's like a little thing which you put CDs in and plugs it into his computer.
Yep.
But it's only like one.
Yeah. It was basically like that, but yeah, there were kind of 6 on top of each other, so you could record it onto 6 CDs at the same time. It was pretty cool. I would have liked one, but you know, you live and learn. I would have probably also spent the money on Bitcoin because I'd be a millionaire by now. But you know, you can't win them all.
Right. Did you always want to work in music?
Yeah, pretty much. I think I went through a couple of things when I was a kid, and I wanted to be a ferry captain for a while because I went on holiday on a ferry. And then I quite wanted to be a removals man, because when we removed, when I was about 6 or 7, I remember seeing the removals men sitting in the van eating chips. And I was like, I'd like to eat chips in the van every day. That sounds great. I was quite easily influenced as a child, I think. But then as soon as I hit sort of 17, 18, well, maybe even before that, actually, 15, 16, I started getting in bands and playing in a lot of bands. And yeah, I played in some indie bands that did all right, then played in a metal band that got signed and toured Europe and the UK, and we were on MTV2 once. So yeah, a not particularly successful metal band. And I sort of finished that, and I was kind of like, I love doing the music stuff, I really enjoy it, but I also sort of think that the labels we signed to didn't treat us particularly well. And also, I'd been in that metal band for sort of 5 or 6 years, and I couldn't face going straight back into another band, you know, the effort and the sort of the drive you put into that. So I sort of started a label instead with my housemate, Kev, who also runs Big Scary Monsters, and it went from there. So yeah, I've wanted to be working in music for years, really. So yeah, I was quite lucky. I think I met up with Kev. We had a few nights sort of discussing what we were going to do and how we were going to make it work. And then we just got going, you know. We started off with the bet and a few £100 and made some 3-inch CDs. And the whole label was run out of a small box in our house, which was about yay big, which had all of our CDs in and all of our little sort of, you know, notepads and stuff of everything. And then after a year, we broke that box by mistake. I think Kev jumped on it when he was drunk. And then we decided we were either going to have to quit the label or get bigger. So we got bigger, and it's all gone on from there.
Nice. Right. Would you rather only ever be able to drink Alcopops or only ever be able to eat boozy chocolates and wine gums?
That's these are the kind of questions that most music magazines don't ask, so I'm really appreciating this. A really tricky question. I think personally I'd rather drink Alcopops always, but I do worry that my teeth would rot within about a year. So although they probably would with wine gums and boozy chocolates as well, I'm going to go with Alcopops as long as I get a sponsorship deal with Hooch, and they can send me free Hooch. And that way, I think it would be quite cheap, because otherwise it's going to get really expensive. So, so yeah, I'll go with drinking Alcopops as long as Hooch sponsor me, because I just love the taste of them. You know, Hooch completely inspired the label. So I feel like, you know, doing my record label stuff, going hand in hand with drinking Alcopops as I work would be a very productive way to take the label forward.
Okay. What advice would you give to young people who are interested in music?
Cool. I think the most important piece of advice for young people wanting to get into music is just go for it and don't put too much pressure on yourself. I think it's a thing that a lot of people do when they're younger. It's sort of like, you know, you start a band and then you're like, oh, we've got to get to this stage, we've got to get signed, we've got to kind of you know, be playing this show. Like there's other people who are maybe playing bigger shows than us. And actually, if you start it, and like I did with my bands and with the label, and it's fun, I think that's the absolute key thing about getting into music. It's trying not to force yourself to do it. Trying not to force yourself to kind of take steps that you don't necessarily want to do, and actually enjoying it. Because I think if you can enjoy it from the start, then stuff will come from that. And if you've got the enjoyment at the basis of it, then everything is positive, right? It's kind of like, you know, people like enthusiasm, I feel, and people like that, you know, for me as a record label person, when I listen to someone's band and I'm able to tell them, you know, this is brilliant, I love it, it's really great, really want to work with you on it. That kind of enthusiasm is infectious. And I think if you go into it forcing yourself in different ways and forcing yourself to do things that you don't necessarily want to do, or forcing yourself to try and, you know, get bigger quicker than you would naturally, then you start to put pressure on yourself and you start to kind of just get resentful about it and get down about it and all of that kind of stuff. So I think that's absolutely, you know, doing it because you love it and then working your way through there is my sort of key piece of advice. I would also say to young people who were interested in starting a label, is just kind of be careful with your money from the start. I've seen lots of sort of young people find a band and basically say, I'm going to start a label because this is the best band ever. And, you know, I'm going to spend all my money on it because I know this band are going to be successful. And then, you know, with the best will in the world, some of the best bands in the country are brilliant, but for whatever reason, don't get the success and the money that they maybe deserve. And once you've put all of your cash into one act, you're kind of finished, right? If it doesn't work out. So it's just making sure that if one of your acts doesn't work out, that you've still got a bit of money to take on the next step. And, you know, you're not going to ruin yourself if one band doesn't work out. So it's kind of...
He's on mute.
Mute.
You're on mute.
Am I off mute now?
Yeah, you're off mute. You're on mute
Cool.
for a few seconds.
Oh, right. Okay. So, yeah.
I got up to the bit when don't put all your money into one band and have extra ones up your sleeve.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's key is not putting all of your money in one go, you know, sort of going for it and being excited about it and just sort of trying it, but also make sure that you don't leave yourself in a perilous financial situation if it doesn't work out, because you never know what's going to happen. Bands can split up, all sorts of stuff can happen. So you know, that's kind of tricky. And the only other thing I would say, I think would be something along the lines of perception is really kind of important. If you're building a label or building a band, it's kind of like, if you can speak to someone, say you're starting your first record label and you go and speak to a band and they say, why should we sign with you, Arlo? And you've got like all the information you've got like a nice looking website, you have talked to really sort of good music journalists. Yeah. So you sort of say to them, look, it's because of this. I want to run a label because, you know, I know these people. I can help you with this. I can help you with that. It just sort of shows the band that you're thinking about it, you know? So if the band perceives that you're a good person to help them get along and that you're enthusiastic and you're positive, then that's really great. So it's keeping that enthusiasm and that positivity, I think, and sort of just making sure that when you speak to musicians, or indeed if you're trying to be in a band, when you speak to other bands and all of that kind of stuff, sort of know why you're there, know what you're up to, and kind of, you know, have that behind you.
Right. How's the last year with COVID changed things for the label?
Yes, it definitely has. You know, I think bands not being able to tour has been a real misery for everybody. You know, we all miss live shows, as I'm sure you do. And it's been really difficult, you know. It's a lot of money that's lost for bands because they can't sell records on the road, they can't get paid for gigs, all of that kind of stuff. So it's made life more difficult. There's been a lot of releases kind of rescheduled. There's been lots of things we've had to change to make sure that, you know, everything still works out. And it's been frustrating for people, especially booking agents, just having to reschedule tours over and over and over again. And, you know, for us, it's been sad because we like to do big live show parties and have lots of people come down and all of that kind of stuff. So we haven't been able to do any of that. So that's been all the negatives. I think it's been really difficult. But on the positive side of things, I think it's allowed us to kind of, look at where the label's going, restructure a little bit, sign some new bands, kind of work with bands who, might not have otherwise put their records out. There's one we're announcing this week called the Stepney Sisters. Now, Stepney Sisters were a band from the 70s, and they were one of the original kind of feminist rock bands that were coming out. And they've never had a chance to release their album. But because of lockdown and because of them sort of thinking like, we've got some songs there, we should put them out, they've got in touch and now they want to release it, which is really nice. And the guitarist turns out to be Anya from Dreamnails' mum. So it's kind of like we're signing Anya to the record label in Dreamnails and now her mother to the record label as well. So that's nice. It's allowing us to find records that might not have come out with this otherwise. So there has been positives. But I'm looking forward to life going back to normal. I feel like there's going to be another summer of cancelled festivals this year, which is going to be really upsetting again for everybody. But we shall see.
Yeah.
You have an email about Stepney today.
Oh, Mum says I had an email about Stepney Girls from their PR.
Ah, yeah, that would be it. So yeah, that's sort of coming out this week. It's a slow burning release, but we've got a big feature in the Guardian for them coming up in a couple of weeks, which will be lovely. So it's really nice, because obviously they're sort of getting on a bit age-wise now, being able to, John Kennedy played them at the weekend on Radio X, and there's going to be a nice Guardian feature and stuff for them. So yeah, it's really nice to kind of see that happening.
Okay. Right. I know, like, parents, you're not supposed to have favourites, but who is your favourite band on the label?
Man, that is a question that could get me in so much trouble. Yeah, that is a good one. Okay. So what I'm going to have to do here is pick one. Oh, sorry, my phone computer keeps pinging. It's probably pick one of the older bands, because I can't pick one of the new bands, because otherwise they'll be like, I honestly, if I didn't pick Ditz as my favorite, Anton would get so upset. So I can't risk that. But what I'm probably going to say is, I think my
Wait,
sorry.
You could just edit it and send it to them. Just edit it saying, Ditz are my favourite. False advertising is my favourite. And send it to
Exactly.
every fans.
Yeah, I mean, maybe if you can do different versions of the zine that I can send to all the bands that say all the different ones on there. Yeah, that would be kind of cool. You'll save the label, Ali. So
yeah, no, Mum says we can put a little sticker over it, then you can just write in. Here you go.
So yeah, I think that would be good. So what I'm going to say is, I think possibly my favorite band the label has ever released, and this is a personal thing because their first record was one of my favorite albums of all time, and we got to release their third record, and they haven't done anything for a while, and they're such lovely people and lovable, individuals. I think I'm going to say Tellison. We released their third album some time ago now, probably 5 or 6 years ago, but it is truly an absolute masterpiece. Like, as I say, I shouldn't have favorites. I don't have favorites, really. But I'm going to say Tellison, just because they're such a joy to work with. And their first album is probably my favorite album of all time. And I think their third record is basically as good. So, yeah, I'm going to say Tellison.
Right. Tell me about your best ever day at work.
Best ever day at work. I mean, every day running Alcopop is an absolute joy, to be honest. I'll tell you about my very favourite day at work. It was when we bought the UKIP website, and I was doing dry January at that time, so I wasn't drinking. And in the morning, I saw a tweet from a Vice guy who said, "Oh, by the way, UKIP," and I don't know if you know about UKIP, they're a sort of a political organisation that, yeah, but don't have very nice views, essentially. So we don't like them. But basically, somebody from Vice tweeted and said, "Oh, the UKIP website has the domains run out." And I was like, "What? The domains run out?" So I bought it and then put a tweet out saying, "I've just bought the UKIP website. That's a bit weird." And my Twitter exploded. It was amazing. And I just had emails from like loads of sort of music magazines. Lawyers started getting in touch with me saying like they're going to try and come and sue you and we'll represent you for free, we'll look after you. We had loads of people sort of reaching out to say, can we have the UKIP website? We're going to do positive kind of immigration things on it, it's going to be really great. And we had all of these kind of amazing offers for the website. And I had like political journalists phone me up from outside the House of Parliament sort of to talk about the story and all of this, and it was just the craziest day, and it all came off the back of one tweet and buying this website, and it was just such a like, I've never experienced anything like it. I kind of felt like I was sort of front and center of the news for the day. It was really weird. And then we got to release an interesting record, which was which was a record called The Wit and Wisdom of Nigel Farage, because basically Nigel Farage sort of comes out and says that he wants to stop immigrants coming into the UK, that it's UK for the English and all that. They're quite bigoted right-wing views.
I read about it on Wikipedia. Wasn't it just silent?
Yeah, yes. So basically we said, here is all of Nigel Farage's wit and wisdom, and then put it on a silent vinyl, i.e. he has no wit or wisdom. So the A side was completely silent. The B side, we worked with Enter Shikari, Rao or Rue from Enter Shikari, who made a sort of remix of it. So it was basically just like the sound of silence, but with the occasional sound of a bird chirruping in the background, or some moss going across the road, that kind of thing. So yeah, that was a really fun one for us, and I think that was my best ever day at work because it was just so crazy.
Yeah, that's how I felt when I was first on BBC Breakfast. Like I can
imagine
media. Right?
Yeah, I remember seeing it, as I say, and it was just sort of like seeing everybody on Twitter go, "This is awesome," and it was like, "Wow, this guy is really kicking." Yeah, that was awesome. And it's just funny, isn't it? You sort of, that one thing happens, and then that day you're just like, "Whoa, whoa, stop!" But yeah, very exciting.
Yeah, all right. And what's your worst day at work?
Oh man. It's usually when loads of big invoices come in, and they always seem to come in at the same time. So you're sort of like, oh, everything's going well. And then you're like, oh no, lots of invoices to pay. And that's always depressing. But I think probably, it would probably be when someone split up, I imagine. We had a day, and I won't say who the band was because I don't want to embarrass them or whatever they're doing now, but we had a band who split up on the day we released their first single, which was really bad. And on the same day, they cancelled their entire tour. And so we were just announcing them, and then they split up on the same day. So that was really depressing because you put a lot of time and effort into things. And then when it finishes on the day of release, you're kind of like, oh, what is going on here? Why have you not told us? We've already pressed the stock. It's like, this is going to be a bit of a disaster. So yeah, that was pretty bad. And I don't want to say who the band was, but it was a long time ago, to be fair.
Right, Marmite, yes or no?
Yes.
Right answer.
Yeah, 100 times. I love it.
It's great. A couple of weeks ago, I was just making Marmite on toast, and my sister doesn't like Marmite, so she was just gonna have like jam on toast. And then she decided she didn't want it, so I had like 8 slices of Marmite on toast, and I just felt really sick for the rest of the day.
I was going to say, that sounds like the best day at work stuff. Yeah, my mum used to eat it on Weetabix.
Weetabix?
Yeah, she's like, she swears by it. It's like, it's pretty dry when you eat it, but
is it Weetabix with milk or by itself?
No, Weetabix by itself with Marmite on top. Yeah,
That sounds like, I'm not sure whether that sounds nice or utterly horrible.
It sounds very dry, doesn't it? But yeah, she says it's great.
Who are your music villains?
Music villains. You see, we're Alcopop. We're quite positive, you see. I don't really have many. Let me have a think. There must be some. Who are the musical villains? My wife's just come up the stairs. I'm just musical villain.
What way?
Just a villainous person in music. Oh, that's a bit. Yeah, I don't know. She wasn't much help. Can we come back to that question, and I'll I tell you what I'll say actually for the UK, for the music villains, is the UK government for not helping venues and struggling artists as much as they could have done during the pandemic. I think the way venues have had to kind of like scrap to stay alive, I think is really bad. I think we're going to lose an outrageous amount of small venues who are such an important part of the gig economy. And I think, you know, some venues have been really proactive and been able to sort of make things happen, the Windmill and the Lexington and things like that. But I don't know, I think we're going to lose a lot of venues, and I think it's going to really hurt the touring scene, and really going to hurt bands who are kind of, you know, the lifeblood of this industry. So they will be my music villains, the UK government as a whole.
Yeah, my mum was really sad like a week and a bit ago because the nightclub where she and my dad met shut down.
Yeah, and that's it. And that kind of stuff is going to be happening a lot. And it's really sad because people's history are based in that, you know? I mean, in Bristol, you've got all the small venues that Idols have played in. What was the venue that your mum met your dad in?
Wait, what was it called? After Dark in Reading.
Yeah, it's such a shame. And like, you know, I just think it's really short-sighted and really negative that these things are going to happen. So, and they've just not done enough, and there's not enough funding for them, and they've just sort of said, well, let the night economy die. So yeah, that would be my villain in music. And I would therefore like to say that on the flip side, you've got like a hero like Amy Lame on Radio 6, who's doing her best to change that and highlight the issues. So I think she's a bit of a music industry hero, taking on the villains. So yeah.
Yeah. If you could sign anyone, who would it be and why?
I mean, the Subways were pretty high on my list of bands I'd really like to sign. So that's nice. Tick that one off. Art Brut were as well. I love that band. Really are such a special band. I mean, I guess when it comes to, if I could sign anyone, it comes down, would I sign someone who makes me loads of money, or would I sign someone just because I love the music? I think I'd probably, do you know what? Probably go for Alex Leahy at the moment, because we listen to her record all the time and she's brilliant. Lahey. I don't know if you've heard her, but she's got a really good record.
I'd sign someone who would make me lots of money. Then I'd get big. Then I'd be able to sign her.
Yep, that's true. That's true. And I mean, to be fair, I reckon Alex Leahy would make you a fair bit of money. She's an Australian singer. I'll pop her name in there as well. It's well worth a listen. Love You Like a Brother is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, I'd probably sign her. But then, you know, if somebody turned up and was like, Jack, do you want to sign the Rolling Stones? I'd probably do it, make a load of money, like you say, and then you know, set my label up on an island somewhere and sell stuff from there. So yeah. But Alex Leahy, I think, would be my one I'd most like to sign. I think she'd really fit on the roster as well.
Do you want to post us some photos, which we will take from the recording?
Yes. I got this little lemon. Yeah, sorry, my lighting's not very good, but I know. Yeah, that would be.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you, Arlo. It's been a real pleasure. And as I say, we thank you so much for all the support you give our bands. It's brilliant and really lovely to kind of chat to you on Twitter, you know. And it's just great. It's great that you're getting involved with this so young. God only knows, you're probably going to be like running Kerrang by the time you're 16. So it's exciting stuff, man.
Right. Oh, I've got Alcopop hoodie on.
Oh, amazing. That's so cool. Yes, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, we'll text Bobby from the Politodome, then maybe he can send you the single.
Yeah, that would be great, actually. It'd be nice to have a listen to that.
Right. Bye.
Awesome. Well, thanks ever so much, and thanks to your mum. And I shall see you soon. If you need anything else, just drop us a line.
Yeah. Bye.
Cool. Take care, pal. Speak to you soon.